What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to be having a little bit of a look at the top 10 cards from logos. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have done 5 of the 7 houses. I'll pop links to the other ones in the description. But if we're really going to be committed to finding out the very best cards in Keyforge Call of the Archons, we really need to look at every house. Today, it's time for logos. I did a poll over on Facebook, as I often do. Thank you to everyone that joined in with that. And with one exception, I agree with you guys. So a couple of honourable mentions before we start off. Sloppy Lab Work. Sloppy Lab Work is a great card. It gives you an Ember bonus when you play it. That's quite nice. And when you play it, you can archive a card and discard a card. This is great, but the reason it ends up as an honourable mention rather than as one of the top 10 is purely because it's not always great. There are times when you don't want to archive a card but you don't mind discarding one. Or there are times where you don't mind discarding a card but you'd rather not archive one. Where you're archiving, say, Mars, and you don't want to archive his Shadows, but Shadows is all you've got to archive, and it gets a little bit annoying. Or there are times you neither want to archive or discard, but then you want the Ember bonus. I've got this in a couple of decks. It's annoyed me a couple times, but it's been incredibly powerful as well. The other honourable mention which just falls short here is Doc Bookden. A 5-power creature with no elusive, no skirmish, decent power but not great. When you reap, you draw a card. And it's nice, but it's not stunning. And I think there are a bunch of cards on this list that are genuinely stunning cards. When you reap, you draw a card. It gives you a card advantage, something which logos are not, let's say they're not shy about doing. It's a very nice card, but I don't think it's really got the oomph that some of the other cards have got. So in at number 10, we have NEURO SYPHON. Hey, remember the whole drawing thing I said about? This is an action, and you get an Ember bonus when you play it. If your opponent has more Ember than you, steal one and draw a card. Bearing in mind, if they don't, you still get the Ember bonus for playing it, so it's rarely a bad card to play. I say rarely because we've got cards like Burn the Stockpile, which makes you lose 4 your Ember if you've got 7 or more. So if you've got 6, your opponent can't play Burn the Stockpile, and you can forge a key next turn. If you've got 7, they can play it, and it's very bad. So there are occasionally downsides. Generally speaking, though, that's not going to be the case. It's a nice little card. You're only stealing 1, which won't always be enough. You're only drawing 1, which often won't be enough. But you got 2 good effects in 1 card with an Ember bonus. I'd say that's good enough for number 10. In at number 9, Dysania, an incredibly good card. Sometimes. 4-power creature, no elusive, no skirmish. It's fine, it's not great. But when you play it, your opponent discards each of their archived cards, and you gain 1 Ember for each card discarded in this way. If Keyforge was a game with more archiving, or if there was a constructed format where everyone ended up archiving, this would be phenomenal. But it's not. If you're playing against a deck that loves archiving, yay! If you're not playing against a deck that likes archiving, boo! And that's where we end up here. A phenomenal card, but not all the time, which is why it makes the list but slips down to number 9. In at number 8, Effervescent Principle. When you play it, each player loses half their Ember, rounding down. And then you gain a chain because it's a phenomenal card, but you only gain 1 chain. If you haven't got any others, that means you draw 1 less card 1 time. It's not, 1 chain isn't a huge problem, to be honest with you. If you want to know more about chains, I did a video talking about chain-bound events recently where I did explain them. I'll pop a link to that one in the description as well. This is great because you need cards, and I genuinely believe that most of the best decks in Keyforge, because remember, they are unique decks, so you may or may not have these. The best decks, in my opinion, one of the things that makes them amazing, and I'm talking about the really good decks, they've got an emergency, they're going to forge a key card. And this is an emergency, they're going to forge a key card. Because if they've got 8 Ember, you can make them lose 4. Now, you may have to lose a couple of Ember yourself, but this is, my opponent's going to forge a key, so you play it. Now, I have seen some posts on the Facebook group about how this is confusing. Essentially, if you've got an even number of Ember, you lose half. If you've got an odd number of Ember, take one away, you lose half. So if you've got 9, it's 4.5, but you round down. So you got 9, take away 1, that's 8, you lose 4, keep 5. Job's a good one. So, good card. Very nice card. In at number 7, Neutron Shark. Now, I did go back and forth on switching the two of these around, but Neutron Shark can absolutely wreck your opponent's board. Destroy an enemy creature or artifact and a friendly creature or artifact. Discard the top card of your deck. If it's not a Logos card, do it again. Here's the thing about Neutron Shark. It's, I think, slightly better than Effervescent Printable. Effervescent Printable is, you've got too much Ember. Neutron Shark is, I'm massively behind in the game. You've got too much Ember, and you're going to every turn. You're going to win in a couple of turns. You've got lots of creatures, artifacts, etc. Neutron Shark can basically come along and absolutely wreck your opponent's side of the field. Now, if you've got a better setup, don't play this card. But if they've got a better setup, absolutely do. Oh yeah, and I kind of had to put this above because you can go Neutron Shock, do. You're welcome. In at number 6, Skippy Timehog. Now, all these last 3 have been very, very close in terms of votes on the Facebook poll. 6, 7, and 8. Why does Skippy Timehog come in at number 6? And interestingly, 6 got 8 votes, 7 got 7 votes, and 8 got 6 votes. A little bit weird. But why is Skippy Timehog so gosh darn good? Well, initially, it's got 1 power, and it's not got elusive, and it's not got skirmish. It is one of the weakest creatures in the game. I did a video about that, actually, as well. Maybe I'll link that one, too. But when you play it, your opponent can't use any cards next turn. Now, we need to get the language straight on this one. They cannot use any cards. They can play cards. So they can play actions. They can play down creatures, but they cannot use any creatures. Even something like Silvertooth, where you play it down and it's ready, you can play Silvertooth down, but you cannot use Silvertooth. You can play actions, you can play upgrades, you can play artifacts, creatures, etc., etc., but you cannot use artifacts, you cannot use creatures. No reaping, no fighting, no actions. There we go. It shuts down a lot of your opponent's deck for a turn. And if you know that they've got a field full of cards to use, then you play this and all they've got is what's in their hand, which might not be great. This can buy you a turn. Just flat out buy you a turn. And whereas something like Effervescent Printable is good if they've got lots of Ember, and something like Neutron Shark is good if they've got a better setup than you, Skippy Timehog is good if they want to use any cards next turn, which they probably will. In at number 5, a card I desperately wanted to put higher but couldn't because the top 5 in logos are nuts. Wild Wormhole. You get an Ember for playing it, and you get to play the top card of your deck. If it's an artifact, put it in play. If it's an action, you play it. If it's a creature, you put it in play. Now, this can backfire. So, for instance, you could end up having to play Gateway to this. Gateway to this destroys each creature and gains you 3 chains. You don't want chains because that's 3 turns of drawing fewer cards. And also, you might have more creatures than your opponent. But the whole point of a unique deck game is you learn your deck. So if you know you've got Gateway to this, and it's not worth the risk given your setup, don't play Wild Wormhole. Even if you want the Ember bonus. Most of the time, and again, I've got decks of Wild Wormhole, most of the time, you just end up getting an extra creature, an extra artifact, an extra action. It is redonk. In at number 4, and this is a one change I made from the Facebook group, but 3 and 4 were 35 and 37 votes. Very close together, but massively above Wild Wormhole and below number 2. Timetraveller and Help from Future Self. You cannot split these 2 cards. It's just dumb. You can't do it. Timetraveller is a 2-power creature with an Ember bonus. You don't see Ember bonus very often. When you play it, you draw 2 cards. And then as an action, you can shuffle Timetraveller into your deck. So you play it, get the Ember bonus and 2 cards, then shuffle it back into your deck. That gives you a card advantage and an Ember advantage. That's great. But what really sets it apart here is Help from Future Self, which also gives you an Ember bonus and lets you search your deck and discard power for a Time Traveller and put it into your hand. They come as a pair. They're great as a pair. It is awesome. Big fan of these cards. Because you play Help from Future Self to get an Ember bonus, then you play Time Traveller to get an Ember bonus and draw 2 cards, and then next turn, you just shuffle it back in. It is frankly ridiculous. I've not got a Time Traveller deck, but I've played against a bunch, and they're kind of annoying. But I don't think they're as good as number 3, Phase Shift. Phase Shift is ridiculous. You may play 1 non-logos card this turn. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a deck with 3 Phase Shift in, and you get some nuts turns here. You can play 2, 3, maybe even 4 if you're lucky, extra cards this turn, and they don't have to be from your active house. And there's plenty of house cheating cards we've got in Keyforge. There are plenty of other ones, but they're just generally not as good as this. So take Combat Pheromones. Combat Pheromones is good because it's an artifact, and when you sacrifice it, it's got an Omni ability. You can use it regardless of your active house. You can use 2 other Mars cards this turn. It's a very good card, but it's an artifact. So you got to leave it in play for a turn, which gives your opponent a turn to try and get rid of it. And you can't just play it and then keep going. It's just not as good. Plus, the card number 1 really does Makeshift even better. We'll get there in a minute, ladies and gentlemen. But first, in at number 2, and number 2 wasn't close, 65, almost double what the other 2 got. It's Mother. Mother is the kind of card, when I put up this poll, a couple of people said, yeah, but Mother never stays on the field for more than 1 turn. My opponent always destroys it. Well, that's proof that it's great. During your draw hand step, refill your hand to 1 additional card. You draw an additional card every single turn. Yeah, your opponent's probably going to go after it, but remember, if they're going after this, they're not going after your other creatures. Or it might be the thing that makes them decide to play a Gateway to this, even though they've got creatures they don't really want to get rid of on their side of the field. It is really just awesome. It really is an awful lot of help in a Logos deck. And if you've got a Logos deck with Mother, it's a better one. But number 1 here, and it's not even close. I mean, look, Mother got 65 votes. Library Access got 184. That is pretty much treble the second place, which in and of itself got almost double third and fourth. Library Access is number 1, and to be honest, I don't care what the poll said, Library Access was going number 1. It is possibly the best card in the entire game. For the remainder of the turn, each time you play another card, draw a card. And we recently had... I did a video about the rules as well. I'll pop a link in the description. Sorry, I've done lots of Keyforge videos lately. And essentially, it goes straight to the discard pile, which means you can use a card like Nepenthe Seed to reuse it. Or you can run through your entire deck and then play it down again. And then potentially run for your entire deck. And you can have 3, 4, 5 of these going at once, drawing 3, 4, 5 cards every time you play it. And this combos so nicely. So Wild Wormhole. You play it down, you draw a card. It lets you play the top card of your deck, or you play the card, you draw another card. You play Phase Shift, you draw a card. Oh, now I'm allowed to play a non-logos card. You play another card, you draw another card. It's ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. Incidentally, it's what makes Phase Shift better than so many of the other house cheating cards we've got. In my deck where I've got 3 Phase Shift, I actually do have a Library Access. And it's ridiculous. Being able to play Library Access and 3 Phase Shift, I've had turns where I've played like 15 cards. And just absolutely wrecked. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. This much draw power is ridiculous. And there's a deck out there that uses this combination and then ends up playing Key Charge because you've just played so many cards, you're often rolling. And actually, there's a better combo with Key Abduction where you just get so many cards in hand, you just keep being able to forge keys with key abduction. And the best part of this is that the more you play, the better this gets. Because you play it down, you're drawing a card every time you draw. And then you've got more and more cards in hand, so every time you run out of deck, your deck's a little smaller because of the cards you've got in hand. So you're drawing 2 cards every time you play something, because you played a second library access, and your deck is smaller, and it essentially lets you cycle until you're bored or you've won the game. Library access is a borderline broken, ridiculously good card, and if you're particularly familiar with Keyforge, you knew this was going to be number 1. Like, you knew this had to be number 1. And ladies and gentlemen, it's not even close. But this is a stage where I would like to hear your logo stories. Tell me what cards you've got, what decks you've got, what combos you've played. Give me your stories in the comment section. Go nuts. But please do remember the most important rule as always. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter @the_Wossy, where we talk Keyforge and other games. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.